This is XPS foam, a cheap material found at your hardware store. Today I'm going to show you how to turn this humble material into the Tactical Submachine Gun from Fortnite. Hey there, fellow maker. Welcome down to the shop. You know that I love making props from video games, and of course, everyone's been playing Fortnite recently, so I gave it a try. I don't want to brag, but pretty good. Ah, crap. Damn it. Damn it. Oh, come on, Bill. Damn it. Woohoo! King of the world! Pretty great. I am actually pretty good at making props, so I made the Tactical SMG from Fortnite. And along with a free set of blueprints that you can find down in the description, I'm going to show you how I made it. Let's start with our material. This is XPS foam or insulation foam. I don't usually use this foam. I like my EVA foam, but I would like to honor my friend Andrew DFT for hitting 100,000 subscribers. If you'd like to learn more about using this particular material, head on over to his channel and subscribe. Go check out all of the awesome props he makes out of this humble material. Because all of my pieces are made from a variety of thicknesses, I can cut those thicknesses from this foam. For example, some of the pieces are 1/4 inch thick. So I can come in with a ruler and mark out 1/4 inch. Then using a very sharp knife, I can cut off a slice of foam. What I have there is a nice slice of 1/4 inch thick foam, and I can use this to cut out some of my other pieces like that. Alternatively, if you have a bandsaw, you can do something very similar by setting up a fence and running through your foam at a variety of thicknesses. Some pieces like this big fella here need to be rather thick, at 1.5 inches, and it won't fit in my bandsaw, and I want to make sure I get a nice even slice across there. So I can start by marking my cut. Then with a handsaw, I can carefully slice off the extra material. It's a little messy and a little rough, but with a little sandpaper, we can smooth that right out. At this point, we have a lot of tracing and cutting to do. I'm just using a ballpoint pen to mark the surface, holding it down with some metal weight so it doesn't go anywhere. There's our piece, and now it's time to get cutting. Again, a super sharp knife is a really great way to go here. If that's all you have, you can get away with just about everything with this guy. I also recommend a rotary tool. If you don't have one, we'll have links down in the description so you can go grab one yourself. But for now, I'm gonna get to cutting. Again, I'm making these cuts as perpendicular as possible. We want to make sure that these sides are going to match up. Of course, if you have yourself a bandsaw or a scroll saw, those are both excellent tools for doing this kind of work, and they'll keep your cuts nice and perpendicular. These rounded slots here can be kind of tricky to cut out, but I have a couple of tubes. These are just metal tubes I got from the hobby store, and I've sharpened the end of them. So I can use these to cut out the rounded corners. Boop. Once the corners are cut, I can connect them with a nice sharp knife. If they're not quite perfect, I can go in with a piece of sandpaper or a sanding twig and smooth everything out. Over time, the foam will dull your blade. You can replace it or sharpen it. I've got a sharpener here with a little bit of WD-40 on it. Just run it over a couple of times, wipe it off, and it's ready to go. You'll find that the foam starts to tear, and when that happens, stop and refresh your blade. These dotted lines on the template here are for a bevel. So I've got a nail file here. This is about a 200 grit sandpaper. And I'm just gonna carefully bevel over all these corners. There you can see we've got a nice bevel on those edges. These pieces also have some circles on them to cut them in really quickly and easily. I have this sanding drum on my rotary tool here, and I've moved the drum off of the spindle a tiny bit, so there's kind of an indent in there. Now if I spin this up and jam it straight in, it'll make a circle. And there we go, 3 perfect circles. Similarly, we've got some bigger circles here, so I put a bigger sanding drum in and I can cut the circle. There's also this slotted screw head. To cut that, I can use my knife. Again, I want to make sure this is super, super sharp. I'm just going to cut the edges. And then go in at an angle and remove some of the material. And then go into the other side and do the same thing. There we go. We got our screw head. Rounded cuts like this can be kind of tricky to get with a knife. So what I'll do is I will rough cut them and leave plenty of extra material to work with. Then I'll put the sanding drum here in my rotary tool, and I'll use that to chew away at the material until it's the right shape. I leave just a little bit of material on there so I can go back in with some hand sanding to finesse everything back down to those lines. We have to cut the inside of this out, and we can't cut through the outside. Well, we could, and we could glue it back together. I don't want to do that. For this, I could dig at it with a knife, or since I have a scroll saw, what I'm going to do is use a tube to drill a hole. Then I'll loosen the scroll saw, undo the blade, and then I can feed this through the hole, reattach the blade, tighten the blade up again, and then I can now cut out the inside. There's our part. Now we just reverse the process and free the part. This is going to be the barrel shroud thingy. I have the profile drawn on two sides here, and I'll rough cut it here before we start shaping it into a cylinder. These two pieces that I cut, I'm going to keep them so that I can rotate this and cut the other profiles the same way. That's the start of the piece there. Again, if you don't have a bandsaw, you can totally do the same thing with a really sharp knife. To get the rounded shape on here, I'm going to slowly work my way down. This should be about a 2-inch circle, so I've got this circle guide, and I'm just going to draw my lines on there, and then it's 1.5 inches on the other side. Now ultimately I'm going to kind of sand this down to shape, but I can remove a little bit of these corners here to help me on my way. I do want to be really careful here though and not remove too much material. That's a little bit better, but to really get it to shape, I'm just going to use some sandpaper and slowly work my way towards that rounded form. That's just about there. I've been using 60 grit to really remove a lot of material, then I'll work up to 100 and then 200 to smooth it down even further. That's looking pretty good. For the holes in this piece here, I'm just using the template as a guide and my cross marks here to get those guys, and then there's there and there and there, kind of respectively. And then I've got this grindy bit here. And I want to poke some holes in here. I can't use a drill bit, that'll just rip this up. This should leave a nice circular hole. Yeah, that looks pretty good. The dotted line on the handle right here is where we're going to cut a quick little groove. It's just between these two corners here. So I'm going to cut one side of the groove, come back over, cut the other side of the groove. There we go. And these handle pieces will go right over that. All the pieces are cut out. I'll give you a quick rundown on how this first step of assembly is going to go. Handle bit goes there. That part goes up there. This part goes here, and I've actually added another bevel on this edge and on this edge. Since they're the same thickness, I wanted to make a nice line differentiating the two. This doodad goes on there. This piece goes down here that will connect the two halves. This is the sandwich for our magazine. That'll get glued together like that. Then this is the bottom, that'll get glued on there. This is the bottom of the handle, that'll get glued on there. This is the trigger guard, that'll go in there. This is for the trigger, and I haven't cut it out yet. I have a pretty good feeling that if I cut this out of this foam, then I'm gonna break that the first time I handle it. So I'm gonna hold off on that for now. Of course, the barrel part all goes together like so. Then once these parts are put together, we can do some additional assembly. But first, I'll show you how the gluing goes. I'm going to start by lining up a piece where I know it's supposed to go, and then giving it a light outline with a pen, so I know where the glue needs to go. Just like that. For the glue, I'm using wood glue. This stuff bonds really well and it dries fairly fast. I'm going to put a little on there, and then using a disposable brush, I'm going to apply a really nice, even layer everywhere it needs to go. Then, put my piece on, line it up real nice like, and press it down into the surface. I especially want to make sure the outer edges here are nice and lined up. If I want to make sure that stays down while I work on the rest of the thing, I can put a heavy weight on there. This is just a 1, 2, 3 block. Then of course that gets repeated for the rest of the parts. Now we play the waiting game. This side has had about 10 minutes to dry and it's kind of holding on there. I'm going to flip it over and glue the other side, but I want to make sure it lays flat. So I've got some pieces of this 1/8 inch thick foam here that I'm going to put down there, and I think there, and that should make sure that this whole side is flat when I flip it over. Actually, right there needs to be a 1/4 inch. There we go. Now I can glue the other side. This piece here is the top, that's the bottom. It's tapered, it's thicker at the top than at the bottom. So I'm gonna go in and just kind of eyeball it. That's the center there. Just draw a line like that. And now I need to remove that material. Go in with my sharp knife and carefully cut that in. Now I can cut that close to the line and then go in with my sanding stick here and smooth it all up. Just do that all the way around. I'm also going to take the time to sand some of these parts. I want to sand the whole thing before I paint it. If I can get it to like a 400 grit, that'd be great. For any of the detail parts, I can go in with one of these sanding sticks and really kind of finesse those surfaces. And then once I want to really smooth things out, I'll start with a 220 grit sandpaper. Then to finish it up, I'll use a 400 grit, and that gets it really nice and smooth. I can even break some of those corners right there to give a nice softer round over with that 400 grit sandpaper. I'm gonna sand all the parts. I'm not gonna show you that because it's super boring. I'll see you on the next step. A lot of these pieces, when you glue the layers together, won't line up perfectly. You could go and trim it with a knife, or I just have a piece of sandpaper here, and I'm gonna slowly and gently draw the piece across until it's flush. I'll go all the way around each face until it's flush, and I can then glue the remaining parts together. This funky little sight doodad has a hole through it, so I'm just freehanding a rectangle here, just kind of guessing where that's gonna go. And I'll start by punching a hole through it with my sharpened tube here. Careful not to cut my finger on the other end. That'll give us a place where we can go in with a knife and just start whittling away. Again, making sure not to poke my finger on the other side. Just cut into the corner. Just like with some of the other things, I'm leaving material to work with here. There we go. It's not pretty, but I have a little sanding twig and I can slowly sand away until it is a nice looking rectangle. A little more cleanup work and that'll be good to go. This weird looking piece here gets glued on under there. So after putting my glue on, I can smoosh it on, but I do want to clamp that down somehow. So I set up a pair of 1, 2, 3 blocks that I can set this on, and then I can put another one on top. And that'll suspend the whole gun and keep that clamped while the glue dries. We're really getting there. I think a couple things I want to do. The grip is rather square, so I'm going to do a little bit of a bevel right here. That's pretty good. I can go in with my sanding stick here and smooth that out a little bit more. There also needs to be a bevel on this part right here. So again, I can go in, cut away most of the material, and then do the rest of the work by hand here. I also want to start smoothing out all these faces. Anywhere that 2 layers met up and they're not perfectly flush, I can take my sanding stick and sand them down until they're nice and smooth. And that can be done all the way around on all of these faces here. This piece here goes over and fits right there, but this edge needs to be beveled so that these two faces meet up nicely. So again, we'll go in with a knife and do the sort of preliminary work. Chew our way down, put a nice 45-degree angle cut on that, and then go in with our sanding stick and again finesse it into shape. Of course, I'll do that on both sides, but now you can see that fits quite a bit nicer. Getting these pieces to fit together correctly is a little challenging because obviously these pieces aren't machine level precision, although I did try my best. This piece needs to be lower, so what I'll do is mark on this piece here where this guy lines up, and I'll cut a little notch out. And I can cut through to get that started, and I'll do the same thing over here. And then I want to level this area out between the two. Carefully, this is really thin. And that little knot should give us some clearance so that these two pieces will lock together. And when all these pieces get glued together, that's pretty good. I can finesse that a little bit until these fit together really well. Almost time to paint, but before I do that, a couple things. I want to seal this with wood glue so that the surface is a little bit smoother. Also, I don't want to spray paint it right now because spray paint tends to melt styrofoam. So, got some blocks of wood here, got some nails, and smush it down on my nails. I realize that if I cut the nail heads off of these, it's kind of pointy, and that's a lot easier to stick the foam on. That'll hold it while I'm brushing on the wood glue and when I'm painting. Some of these other pieces are kind of small, no place to put a nail through them, so got this double-sided tape, and I can put it down on a hunk of wood and stick it down. Now the bottom of that doesn't need any paint on it, it's fine.
Tomorrow's my birthday. Yeah! Are you just fishing for more happy birthdays? I am. Yeah. So you know what happened, guys? Did I? I'm coming over. I'm bringing cake.
Now it's time for the fun part. I got all my pieces pretty much primed. I've got the game art here, so I have something to go off of my colors. Basically, there's like a darker silver, a lighter silver, some brown, and what looks like kind of a wood. I'm going to do all of this again with more acrylic paints, starting with the darker silver, since I've already got some black in my palette here. I'm going to mix that up with some silver to make kind of a darker gunmetal color. It is not super clean either, so I don't need to make sure I get everything totally covered. If some of the black peeks through on these darker metallic parts, that's okay. Time to start putting this together. There is more painting to do, but I want to put everything together and then I'll finish up on the painting. Anywhere that these pieces are going to glue down, so this surface here and this surface here, if I can glue those down to bare foam, that would be awesome. You can see this part hasn't been painted, but this part has, so I'm going to take some sandpaper and just scuff that up a little bit. There's some bare foam showing there, so that should help grip this a little bit when I glue it down. Now this wood glue takes about half an hour to dry, and I prefer to work quicker. The problem is that super glue, while it does dry really fast, it also melts the styrofoam. So because I'm impatient, here's what I've been doing. Put some wood glue on there, and then I'm gonna put some super glue on the inside here. Now it will melt this part a bit, but I'm never gonna see that, and that should clamp it together and hold it for long enough that it should stay in place and I can keep working on it. There we go, that seems to be in there nice and strong. I think this part's gonna go on here next, and it really only touches down here, so I think that's where I'm gonna glue it. I'm also gonna try something. I'm gonna use the super glue, but it's gonna be on the paint and on the paint here. It won't be the strongest bond, but it also won't eat through the foam. So I put a little glue here. So I've lined everything up and I'm just holding it together for a few seconds. Not as strong as I would hope. That seems fairly sturdy. I don't want to push it though. These other pieces are gonna lock in and hopefully that'll hold this better. All right, I got everything pretty much put together. I gotta tell you the super glue, don't know if I'm saving any time because it does seem to stick pretty well, but it melts the foam enough and then you gotta let the foam kind of solidify. So, I don't know, wood glue probably would have been the best bet. But it seems to be working. I'm just gonna walk away, let it dry. I let everything dry overnight, both the glue and the paint. It seems to be pretty secure. It's time to do the detail painting. There's this sort of chipped paint look on most of the gun here. This is kind of weird because this is supposed to look like wood. It's chipping off and there's metal underneath. I don't know what that's about. Maybe this is like a fake wood vinyl sticker that's peeling off. That's what I'm gonna go with. Anyway, there's a layered effect with a black edge and then a silver paint. So I think I'm gonna paint black first and then go over that with silver, leaving just a little bit of the black showing. For the layer of silver here, instead of using paint, I've got just a silver Sharpie. And what's great is I have a fine amount of control and I can trace that black outline so that there's just a little bit of it showing there. Then I can fill the rest of this in. So there we go, we've got the silver looking like it's chipping through the finish down to some sort of exposed metal. There you go, the Tactical SMG from Fortnite, all done, all made using styrofoam. I do hope you give this one a try. Again, we've got free blueprints down in the description. The materials are available at any hardware store. I will say, this stuff isn't incredibly durable, so I wouldn't bring this to a convention. This is more for like a wall decoration or for a photo shoot. Like I said too, if you're interested in more builds using this material and including some crazy awesome Fortnite builds, check out our buddy Andrew DFT's channel. I believe he's working on a minigun. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in the shop. As always, links to the tools and materials that I use will be found down in the description. And hey, if you give this build a try, I'd love to see it. You can do it in foam or use those blueprints to make it in a variety of other materials. If you do make it, send me a picture over on Twitter. I'm at Chinbeard. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you again so much for hanging out with me in the shop. I'll catch you in the next build.